City Council meeting of Tuesday, May the 19th, 2026. This meeting is being held in person by electronic means. Council members and the public may participate by either method. Any members joining electronically are reminded to enable video to confirm quorum. This meeting is being live streamed on the city's website and YouTube, and meeting progress will be updated regularly on X at Van City Clerk. So in case of an emergency where we have to evacuate the building, please direct your attention to the glass doors, walk through there, or when they're open, walk through and take a left at the pillar and please walk down the stairs. If that exit's obstructed for any reason whatsoever, please take note of the 4 exits on this chamber, and we'll show you how to get out accordingly. If you need any kind of mobility assistance, please stay in place and one of our super friendly teammates will help you get to a safe location. There's also a defibrillator at the end of the hallway in case we need it. I do want to acknowledge that we're hosting today's council meeting on the traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. And I do want to thank them for their generosity and hospitality and love and care they show this great land that we get to live, work, and play on. I also want to acknowledge our incredible teammates at the City of Vancouver, throughout the City of Vancouver, who work incredibly hard every single day to make our city a better place to live, work, and play, and very thankful. With that, can we please get a roll call?
Mayor Sim in the chair, Councillor Kirby-Young, Councillor Dominato, Councillor Bly, Councillor Fry. Councillor Fry, can you hear us? We'll get IT to check with Councillor Fry. Councillor Montague? They can't hear us.
We need to pause for a couple of minutes.
Councillor Fry, can you hear us?
I can, yes.
Thank you. All right, we're just on roll call. Councillor Montague?
Yes, I can hear you and see you now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Klassen? Councillor Meisner?
Present.
Councillor Zhou?
Present.
Councillor Orr? And Councillor Maloney. You have quorum, Mayor Sim.
Great, thank you very much. So today we gather to honor the memory of the passengers aboard the Guru Nanak Jahaz, or the Komagata Maru, a ship that arrived in Vancouver's harbor on May the 23rd, 1914, carrying hopeful British subjects from Punjab who were denied entry under exclusionary and discriminatory immigration policies. This event remains a profoundly troubling chapter in our city's history, one in which racism and exclusion prevailed over justice and compassion. In 2026, as we continue to reflect on this legacy, we recognize that the impacts of these injustices are not confined to the past. They shape the lived experiences of communities today. By proclaiming Guru Nanak Jahaz, or Komagata Maru, Remembrance Day in the city of Vancouver, we not only acknowledge these historical wrongs, but also renew our commitment to confronting systemic racism in all its forms. The city remains dedicated to working in close partnership with the South Asian community and all communities that who faced discrimination to advance reconciliation, promote equity, and build a Vancouver where everyone feels a genuine sense of belonging, dignity, and inclusion. So I'd like to ask my fellow council members to join me and read a proclamation. And here we go. And before we start the proclamation, I do want to make a couple of additional comments. When we came into office, one of the most important things that we did, and I'd say personally, but it reflects the entire council at the time, was acknowledging the Komagata Maru and what happened. And not just with the proclamation, but also with the street naming as well. And not just any street renaming. We wanted it to be in Canada Place. because millions of tourists, millions of visitors come to Vancouver every single year, and the vast majority end up there. And we felt it was important that we acknowledge the Komagata Maru with the most number of people to see it. And so this is just a continuation of us paying respect to the memory, but also what happened back in 1914. And so with that, I will get our teammates to read the proclamation.
Proclamation, Guru Nanak Jahaz Komagata Maru Day of Remembrance. Whereas 2026 marks the 112th anniversary of Guru Nanak Jahaz Komagata Maru incident, in which a ship carrying 376 British subjects from Punjab, including 340 Sikhs, 24 Muslims and 12 Hindus, arrived at Vancouver's Burrard Inlet on May 23, 1914, and with the exception of some returning passengers, was denied entry into Canada.
And whereas passenger had valid documents and sufficient funds to pay a discriminatory head tax and endure 2 months on board in poor and sanitary conditions, often going for days without food and water, dispatched pleas for help, and authorities did not respond.
And whereas the passengers, aided by the local South Asian community, engaged in a legal battle led by Gurdeep Singh and their lawyer, Joseph Edward Bird, the South Asian community organized protests and fundraisers to support them.
And whereas on June 29, 1914, Vancouver City Council openly supported racist and discriminatory laws by passing a resolution stating that it was, quote, unalterably opposed to the admittance of Hindus and other Asiatic races to this country. The resolution also claimed that these British subjects would pose a serious threat to civilization, both economically and socially. The Council conveyed this sentiment to the Premier of British Columbia via telegram.
And whereas the British Columbia Court of Appeal ruled against the passengers, leading to their forced return to India. On July 23, 1914, the Komagata Maru, also known as Guru Nanak Jahaz, was ordered to sail back to India, where those on board were labeled as political disruptors. Tragically, 19 passengers were shot and killed by British Indian troops. Many were injured, and many others were jailed 4 years.
And whereas many descendants of these passengers later immigrated to Canada, settling in Vancouver, and continued to fight against discriminatory laws. This included advocating for the right to work in a profession of their choosing, holding public office, and the right to vote, which was granted in 1947.
And whereas on May 23, 2021, Vancouver City Council officially apologized for its 1914 resolution and the harms it caused. In 2023, Komagata Maru Place was revealed as the secondary honorary name of Canada Place to acknowledge the victims, their descendants, and all affected by the tragedy.
And whereas the City of Vancouver is dedicated to addressing inequities, including racial discrimination in all its forms, and is committed to ongoing redress work with South Asian Canadian communities to address historical discrimination against people of South Asian Canadian descent in Vancouver.
Sorry, and Jazz, you should be up here, by the way. We'll read the last line together. How's that? Now, therefore, I, Ken Sim, the Mayor of the City of Vancouver, and
on behalf of Jazz Verdi and the Vancouver City Council, do hereby proclaim Guru Nanak
May the 23rd, 2026, as
Guru Nanak Jahaz Komagata Maru Day of Remembrance in the City of Vancouver.
Thank you. My name is Raj Singh Toor. I'm a Vice President and spokesperson for the Descendants of the Kamagata Maru Society. First of all, I want to say thank you to Inspector Mayor Ken Sim, all the councillors, city staff for recognizing the Kamagata Maru passengers and proclaimed and recognized the Guru Nanak Jahaz Kamagata Maru passengers and proclaimed May 23rd as a Guru Nanak Jahaz Kamagata Remembrance Day in the city of Vancouver. On behalf of the descendants of the Kamagata so I to request it was written by me. Thank you. And also, I want to say thank you to city of Vancouver for renaming the Canada Place name to Guru Nanak Jahaz Kamagata Place, and also apologize their role in the Guru Nanak Jahaz Kamagata incident as well. Behalf of the descendants of the Kamagata Society, which was written by me. Thank you very much for doing that. And also, I went to see the Guru Nanak Jahaz Kamagata Memorial, and city did upgraded the Guru Nanak Jahaz Kamagata Memorial, and it's a great job done by the city of Vancouver. And I would like to say thank you once again, Inspector Mayor Ken Sim, all the councillors, city staff, and arts and culture religious team, Ari Buller, and, and also the Parks Board member, Lawan, for their work making the Guru Nanak Jahaz, upgraded the Guru Nanak Jahaz Kamagata Memorial, a reality, and readers the and the culture readers team, Ari Buller, and the Parks Board member Levan did an excellent job. And it's a great tribute to those passengers who suffered a lot during the tragedy. We can't undo the past, but we can move forward and leave a legacy for future generations by educating them about the past. And this is a very good learning tool to connect the Canadians to their past and build a more peaceful and tolerant tomorrow. And thank you very much for all your for this. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. My name is Jagrad Singh Lally. I'm the Vice President for Sikh Heritage Month Vancouver. Alongside me, it's an honor to stand here today alongside our President, Dod Singh Jal. Again, jumping off of what our individual said here, I sincerely want to thank the Mayor and the Council for your hard work, your leadership, your dedication to the people of Vancouver each and every day for everything that you guys have done throughout your term and everything you guys continue to do to this day. Your continued support for diversity, inclusion, culture, and continued remembrance, community remembrance helps build a city where all communities feel seen, heard, and valued. Now, while the Komagata Maru moment remains one of the darkest times, the darkest chapters in Canadian history, I think it's also very important that we remember it as a story of extraordinary courage, resilience, and perseverance. The passengers of the Komagata Maru, also known as the Guru Nanak Jahaz, stood firmly for their rights, their dignity, their humanity, despite facing immense racism and immense hardship. It's something that I think we should continue to remember each and every day. Today's proclamation is more than words on a paper. It's a promise that these stories are never going to be forgotten. It's a commitment to remembrance, education, and reconciliation. It ensures that future generations will continue learning about the sacrifices of those 376 passengers and understand the importance of building a society rooted in equality, compassion, and justice. As young Sikh leaders ourselves, it's deeply meaningful to see our city recognize and honor this legacy. It reminds us that history must not only be remembered, it must also be taught, protected, and carried forward. Through remembrance, we strengthen our communities and ensure that the lessons of the past guide us towards the future. So on behalf of Sikh Heritage Month Vancouver, we sincerely thank the Mayor and Council for recognizing Koma Garamaru Guru Nanak Jahaj Remembrance Day and for standing with our community in preserving this important history. May we continue to honor the legacy of the 376 passengers, not only through remembrance, but through action by uplifting one another, standing together in unity, and building a future where every person is treated with dignity, respect, and humanity. Thank you.
I wrote few words, so I have to read it. I got a paper in my pocket. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Standing on these traditional lands, we thank with deep humility His Worship Mayor Kensem, members of council, the city of Vancouver, and all who helped restore Guru Nanak Jahaj to its rightful place in Canadian history. Because reconciliation, rectification, and redress requires accuracy. Guru Nanak Jahaj was a Sikh-led initiative carrying Punjabi passengers of Sikh, Muslim, and Hindu faiths. Envisioned by Baba Gurdev Singh Ji, sustained by Khalsa Diwan Society, supported by indigenous people of this land who sent food in solidarity, defended by J. Edward Byrd, who challenged an unjust law. And as redress continues, we remember Pai Meva Singh, sentenced here in Vancouver and hanged in New Westminster. His Shahidi remains part of the city's unfinished moral record and one that true redress must resolve through his formal posthumous exoneration. For this history was never only about exclusion, it was also about what arrived here in Chardi Kala. Guru Nanak Jahaj was the first floating Gurdwara Sahib to bless the Pacific. Guru Granth Sahib enthroned, Nishan Sahib flying high, Langar, Sangat, Pangat, that is what came to these shores. Not division, but dignity. Not exclusion, but Chardi Kala. Guru Nanak unites us. And when memory is named with precision, it does not remain on the margins. It stands where it belonged, at the heart of Canadian history. With immense gratitude to the City of Vancouver for this act of historical courage, this moment will become a catalyst for rectifying the federal apology, so that Canada's national memory also restores the true name with dignity, accuracy, and moral courage, and that is Guru Nanak Jahaj. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, Council, can we take a 4-minute recess? Is that okay? 4-minute recess? Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone. Welcome back. So the plan for today, we're going to break at noon for lunch, followed by the in-camera meeting. Return at 3 p.m. to continue to deal with the remainder of the agenda. If needed, recess at 5 p.m. for a dinner break and reconvene at 6 p.m. to complete the agenda. So in camera, council is required to meet in camera later this week. The reasons and authority under the Vancouver Charter are listed in the agenda. Would someone like to move a motion? Great, thank you. Councillor Kirby-Young, seconded by Councillor Klassen. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Minutes. Minutes one are from the council meeting following the Standing Committee on City Finance and Services meeting on April the 22nd, 2026. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Great, thank you, Councillor Meisner, seconded by Councillor Joe. Thank you. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Minutes two are from the council meeting on May the 5th, 2026. Are there any corrections? Would someone like to move adoption? Councillor Joe, seconded by Councillor Klassen. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Minutes three are from the public hearing on May the 5th and 7th, 2026. Are there any corrections? Would someone like to move adoption? Councillor Dominato, seconded by Councillor Klassen. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Council will now consider matters adopted on consent. We have reports 1 through 12 and referral reports 1 and 2 on the consent agenda for council's consideration. Council may adopt the recommendations for reports 1 through 12 and referral reports 1 and 2 on consent. Does any member wish to hold any of these items for debate or questions to team members? And I see Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'd like to hold report 3, capital grant to More Than a Roof Housing Society for questions.
Okay, so that's report number 3, capital grant by
Yes.
Councillor Kirby-Young.
Thank you.
Councillor Dominato.
Yes, good morning. I'd like to hold report 2, the signed bylaw amendment P&E Exhibition Park for questions.
Great, so that's report number 2, signed bylaw amendment by Councillor Dominato. Councillor Orr.
4, 5, 6, 8, 11, and referral report 2.
Let me get, so report number 4, number 5, number 6, number 11, and referral report number 2.
You missed 8.
I missed 8, okay. So I'm just going to repeat that again. So report number 4, 5, 6, 8, 11, and referral report number 2. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Seeing no one in the queue. Let me just do a little bit of math here. Okay, so before we can consider the consent agenda, if anyone believes that they have a conflict of interest, now is the time to declare it. Anyone have a conflict they need to disclose? Sorry about that. Okay, so then we have, and clerk, if you can just make sure I get this right here, we have report number 1, 7, 9, 10, and 12, and referral report number 1 for consent approval. Is that correct? Great. Would someone like to move motion, move adoption? Great. Councillor Klassen, seconded by Councillor Meisner. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great. The motion carries unanimously. So the following have been approved on consent. Report number 1, lease of portion of Cole Harbor Seawalk adjacent to 333 Mentions Muse. Then we have report number 7, CD-1 rezoning 2244 through 2280 West 6th Avenue. Then report number 9, CD-1 rezoning 2120 through 2130 West 10th Avenue. Report number 10, CD-1 rezoning 1880 through 1898 Main Street and 1851 Lawrence Street. And number 12, CD-1 text amendment 133 through 159 West 49th Avenue, formerly 131 through 163 West 49th Avenue. And then we have referral report number 1, Vancouver ODP amendment and CD-1 rezoning 1745 West 8th Avenue. Okay. So the first report we have is number 1, lease of a portion of Cole Harbor Seawalk adjacent to 333 Mention Muse. Before we begin this agenda item, if anyone believes they have a conflict of interest, now is the time to disclose it. Seeing no one's hands up, this item does not have a team member presentation. And, oh, sorry, that we passed that one. Sorry. Okay. Ignore that. The first report we have is number 2, signed bylaw amendment, P&E Exhibition Park, 2901 East Hastings Street. Before we begin this agenda item, if anyone believes they have a conflict of interest, now is the time to disclose it. Seeing no one here, this item does have a presentation, and we do have team members here to present it. Please go ahead. Oh, sorry, Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Mayor. I move to waive the presentation.
Okay. Seconded by Councillor Meisner. Any discussion? All in favor say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed say nay. Great, we will waive the presentation. Council, you have up to 5 minutes to ask questions of team members. And Councillor Dominato, you're in the queue.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thanks. I just wanted to clarify, just with the proposed signage district, noting the locations, and there's an existing sign at Hastings and Renfrew, but some of the other potential sort of areas around the Hastings Park site. Will there be consideration to light impacts in that? Because there's some residential areas along there and in those corridors. So just consideration of the public realm and impacts to residential, both, there's apartments and there's some detached homes and others along those corridors.
Hi, Jason Olnick, Director of Development Planning. Yes, absolutely. And there'll be a formal review process for this. This just creates a bylaw that allows them to make applications. We'll go through that. The bylaw is also written similar to other bylaws where digital signage and other electronic means have been considered for light levels, changes per minute, and the locations are purposely located as best as possible away from residential. Again, the one in the northwest corner will be the most problematic, and that's located away from the street, and that'll go through a formal review process.
And does that include as well, you talked about light levels, but consideration of maybe, being low level or turned off at certain, hours, things like that, and gained in terms of?
Absolutely. And with any other sign, there's also we'll take complaints, record complaints, and if there are issues, it's a requirement that they work with us to make adjustments.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate those answers. That's all.
Thank you very much. Seeing no. Great, thank you. Is there a seconder? Thank you very much, Councillor Kirby-Young. Council, is there any discussion? Seeing no one in the queue, I'm going to call the vote. Just a reminder for any council member participating virtually, if your video is disabled, you will be marked absent. Okay, if we can please go to the voting panel. And is Councillor Fry absent or is, oh, he is online. Councillor Fry, do you need a vote assist? Oh, here we go. And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay. Next item is item number 3, capital grant to More Than a Roof Housing Society for development of social housing at 1395 Rollston Street. Before we begin this agenda item, does anybody have a conflict that they need to disclose? Councillor Kirby-Young, or are you just in the queue?
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to stop timer there. Okay, this item does not have a team member presentation, and Councillor Kirby-Young, you did hold this item, so please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I do have just a clarifying question because we received the grant reports, but they don't, they indicate reference the ability to lever other funding. For example, this one says the city's anticipated $30 million contribution was a key factor in securing community housing fund funding. And additionally, it speaks to the fact that this amount could be reduced, for example, if the application Build Canada Homes is successful. Can you comment on what the other funding contribution is and how much is levered? I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to get that information and in these reports to include not just what the city is contributing, but what the other partners are.
Ryan Bigelow, Managing Director, Non-Market Housing Development. In terms of funding for the overall project, is primarily funded from BC Housing through the Community Housing Fund. At the moment, there's BC Housing grants, capital grants of $36 million going towards the project, as well as an ongoing operating subsidy in the tune of roughly $3.7 million a year for the next 60 years on the project. We're still in the process of trying to secure additional funding for the project, but at the moment it is fundable to proceed to construction. So the federal government launched Build Canada Homes, and so we are in conversations with them to see if we can secure additional funding for the project to offset the city's contributions and BC Housing's.
Okay, so thanks. I appreciate the context because sometimes we're just approving a grant, and while there may have been more discussion at the referral report, it doesn't necessarily show the context of what that represents. On the Build Canada Homes application that you touched on, what does that look like in terms of the ability to reduce the city's funding?
Yeah, so we have proposed an additional capital grant from Build Canada Homes. That's still under review by Build Canada Homes. So we don't necessarily know if they would contribute and how much. So this could see our capital grant be reduced by up to $15 million if our application is fully approved. But we haven't received any guidance from them in terms of how much and if they're interested at this point.
Okay. All right, that's it for my questions. Thanks, Mayor. I'm happy to move the report.
Great. We just have one more speaker, or Councillor Orr.
Yeah, this was the old Continental SRO, correct? Continental Hotel?
Yes.
And so that had 109 units. And when the permit was granted, it was granted on the premise of a 1-to-1 replacement. If we are now doing only 20% of deep affordability, that looks like it's only 42 units. So are we potentially losing 67 units of deep affordability?
So in addition to the affordable the shelter rate units here at this potential project, the city did also acquire what we call the new Continental on Kingsway.
Yeah.
Right. So that is offering, I believe, 123 units at shelter rates as well. So that's been operational actually since the old Continental was closed down. So in combination, it's actually delivering more affordable housing to the community.
Okay. That's all my questions. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Kirby-Young, seconded by Councillor Klassen. Council, is there any discussion? Seeing no one in the queue, I will call the vote. If we can please go to the voting panel. And that passes unanimously. Great. Item number 4, amendments to the street and traffic bylaw to authorize large format electronic advertising signs on streets. So before we begin, does anybody have a conflict that they need to declare? Seeing no one in queue, this item does not have a team member presentation. Councillor Orr, you held the item, so you have up to 5 minutes to ask questions.
Yeah, I just have a few questions around basically safety and distraction. I know that says the signs will avoid roadways and comply with the Motor Vehicle Act, but I just want to, similar to Councillor Dominato's questions around illumination, image timing, transitions, and whether or not large digital screens near pedestrian areas create distraction or safety issues.
Thank you. Good morning, Paul Storer, Director of Transportation. So what the bylaw amendment does is it allows signs on street right-of-way to be authorized. Through the process of authorizing those signs, we'd be doing a thorough review of those, including a review around road safety. What we are looking to use is the TAC guidelines that look at digital billboards near the roadway and look at things like spacing, transition time between messages, illumination, and conflict with things like traffic signals. So we'd be going through a thorough review process.
Okay, and then in terms of sort of This sort of opening the door to wider expansion, what sort of safeguards are there to sort of prevent that? In terms of just, just kind of opening the door to that commercialization of public space type thing.
Ben Pollard, Chief Strategy Officer. So council will still be engaged in any decisions around any particular signs that would go up in line with the council-approved public realm advertising framework.
Okay, and so that would be, so I guess that answers my next question. What transparency and public oversight mechanisms will exist for contracts, revenue sharing agreements, and sign placement decisions? So that's the
Those will all
same
come to
answer.
council, yes.
Okay, that's enough for me.
Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thanks. Just following up on that, that was going to be my question, is that this modernizes or updates the bylaw to allow electronic static images, my understanding, but each individual application is considered by staff. A determination is made with respects to safety parameters, et cetera, and then each one, and if there are sufficient public benefits, and then it is brought forward to council, and council makes the ultimate determination.
That is
that
correct.
right? Okay. And do we expect that we will be judicious in the number that is approved? We're not looking to
absolutely.
proliferate these in the public realm, for example?
Yes, so the public realm advertising framework that council approved in September 2025 does speak to that. Council will be the one that will say what the level of advertising in the public realm is or is allowable. And so, yeah, we don't expect this to be a significant opening. We expect this to be a small number that provide the maximum public benefit to the city.
Okay, thank you. Happy to move the recommendation.
Great, thank you very much. Is there a seconder? Great, Councillor Dominato. Thank you. Council, is there any discussion? Seeing none, we will call this to vote. And that passes unanimously. Great. Okay, item number 5, or report number 5, I should say. Directions report, consideration and modification to conditions of approval, 1450 West Georgia Street, 1157 Burrard Street, 1640 through 1650 Alberni Street, and 1668 through 1684 Alberni Street. Before we begin this agenda item, if anyone believes that they have a conflict of interest, now is the time to declare it. Seeing no one declaring a conflict, this item does have a presentation. We do have team members to present this item, unless someone wants to waive the presentation. No, okay. Please go ahead.
Sorry, 2 seconds, just trying to get on to Teams. Anybody have internet? Or a Wi-Fi issue. If you can maybe just pull up the presentation for me. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Apologies for some reason corporate email is not working. Corporate internet is not working. So just to give you an overview, this is probably the second or third time this council has probably seen this presentation in these matters before you. My name is Templar Sang Trinaistich, Director of the Rezoning Center, and I'll walk you through the slides. Next slide, please. So this is a report to consider modifications to conditions of approval relating to the enactment timelines for CACs, or as it relates to the CACs. For these 4 projects, 2 on Alberni, 1 on West Georgia, and 1 on Burrard Street. Addresses and their locations are located on the screen there. 3 are located in the West Georgia corridor and 1 in the Burrard corridor within the West End plan. Next slide, please. The first project, and I'll walk you through each one just to give you some historical context, was approved at a public hearing in October 12th, 2021. It's a 49-story mixed-use residential strata rental building with 193 units, 162 market rental units, and commercial space at grade. Next slide, please. This project came with a cash CAC contribution of $8.9 million. as well as DCLs as established at the time of public hearing. They would be subject to change on whatever the DCLs are at building permit stage. So this is a bit of a snapshot back to 2021, including public art. So a total contribution, including CACs, DCLs, and public art of 17.4 million. The CAC cash contribution, which is the subject of today's meeting, and I won't repeat it every time, was payable within 2 years. There's a condition to enact within 2 years of the public hearing, and payment of those funds prior to enactment. That project deadline was extended to 2024, and then again in 2024 to May 2026. Next slide, please. The second project is 1157 Burrard Street. It was approved in public hearing in fall 2021 as well. 47-story mixed-use building, 13 FSR, predominantly strata residential units, including a childcare and an arts and culture hub within the building. Next slide, please. In addition to that, there was a cash contribution of 10.6 million, in addition to the in-kind amenities at the time valued at 22 million. DCLs of about 8 million plus public art for a total public benefit of 41 million. Similarly, this project had those same conditions for requirements to enact. Next slide, please. Third project is 1640 to 1650 Alberni, again approved in public hearing in fall 2021. It includes a 43-story, predominantly residential strata-titled building with replacement residential units for the removal of the existing rental building on site as well. Next one. And again, this one, in addition to the rental replacement units, came with a $32.7 million cash CAC. Next slide, please. Last one here is 1666 to 1684 Alberni. It was approved at a public hearing in May 2022. It's a 40-story strata residential building, and it has been extended from its enactment timeline from May 2024 to May 2026 as well. Next slide. Thanks. And this one too came with a substantial cash CAC of $37 million payable prior to enactment. Next slide. So here, just to summarize, the conditions of enactment at the time as amended, their public hearings were all in 2021 or 2022. They originally had enactment deadlines in 2023, 2024. They've been extended to May 2026. And we're now on the cusp of that timeline, seeking your direction around extension or modifications to the conditions of approval. Next slide. Just as some context, it's important to acknowledge the city's role in the development process. The city has the most control over established city policies and approval processes, whether that's through rezoning or development permits. Staff work with the applicants' timing and expectations to advance the project through enactment and the permitting. And following approval, there's many aspects that affect the project beyond our control, such as funding, financing, interest rates, construction costs, supply and labor and trade availability, as well as general market capacity. And staff, and as you've all known, there's been a significant downturn in the strata market over the last several years. Staff have been in contact with the representatives over the past 2 years. There's been little progress since that time, again, just because of the slowdown in the strata market. And we're now at this point where we have to make a decision to continue with the conditions of approval as they've been set. I think there is a desire to proceed on the part of the applicants, provided there was a market for them to pursue as well. Next slide, please. So our staff's recommendation today is to seek further modifications to the performance obligation on securing the enactment of the bylaws for an additional 2 years. We've been working closely, as I mentioned, together with them. Some of them have expressed an interest to revisit their projects over time, but in the absence of that, the interim step would be to extend those deadlines as well. We think that this is a consistent move from past decisions of council to grant these further extensions while still securing the approval in principle and the CACs that were agreed to at the time. Thank you. So just as a quick recap, where do CACs go if there's some questions on that? Cash CACs are not allocated in the capital plan until they're actually received, so until enactment. So until we receive the monies, they aren't actually deployed into the capital plan. But once they are received, they go to support many of those capital plan improvements in both the West End and the downtown. And this just gives you a bit of a snapshot of where we get those monies from. This is the 2022 to 2026 capital plan. A portion of that is obviously from property taxes, but about half of it, close to it, is from development-related contributions such as DCL, CACs, density bonusing, and the like. So today is not a decision about where do we put the money, it's more about keeping the project active through these conditions of approval, that in the event that they do enact and pursue, that we would be able to secure these monies and ultimately deploy them. Last slide. So the consideration is, again, just to clarify, we did include a consideration that you can refer these projects back to council, to staff to revisit any of the terms of the project, but our recommendation on the last slide is for the extension of those deadlines from May 2026 to May 2028. If you go to the last slide, please. Thank you. I'll just pause there if there's any questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Council, you do have up to 5 minutes to ask questions of team members. Councillor Orr.
Thanks for the presentation. It helped answer a couple of things. Considering that the sort of strata market is cool right now, if we were to force them to sort of pay the CACs now, this is risks sort of stopping the project.
Yeah, fair question. So technically enactment is really at the discretion of the applicant to pursue the project. If they do enact, those obligations are payable. The way the conditions are worded is it's not an obligation to pay, it's a trigger to compel or to help encourage a project to move forward if there's a market to do so. So again, this condition basically holds that value, holds that rate based on the values established at the public hearing date back in 2021. If they choose to pursue this project in the future.
So essentially, if we were to say, no, you need to pay this now, this would sort of force them to be in a position to kind of proceed with the project.
Again, we aren't able to proceed them technically, force them to proceed. I would say if there was a direction to thou shalt pay this and thou shalt enact, that would be a very unique approach. We don't typically do that. And I could also certainly see an applicant just being unwilling to do so.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that kind of answers my question. Like if we were to introduce a sunset clause, essentially, if the developer receives a deferral of the CACs, but then fails to start within 24 months, the rezoning permit should expire. Is that something that?
Yeah, so this is from a bit of a pilot of how we explored some CAC terms back in 2021, 2022. And so this basically is a requirement to enact within 2 years and to secure that approval in principle. We've granted an extension to that over time. These projects are also eligible for the deferred CAC policies. So if they were to enact, only the first $5 million is payable prior to enactment. And then beyond that, they're allowed deferral terms up to 2 years post-enactment. So, for example, the one project had $32 million. $5 million would have to be payable prior to enactment. 27 could be deferred up to 2 years beyond enactment. But we can't compel the first $5 million initially without them enacting.
I see. Interesting. Okay. Just that I'm like seeing, there's a project that's on today's agenda. That's 1745 West 8th. This project is a strata project, and it's offering social housing and a childcare. And this doesn't seem to be offering those public benefits, and we're deferring the CACs. So is this a sort of situation because the land there is just so valuable that we can't sort of extract some public benefits out of that?
Yeah, and I'll speak generally to the one on West 8th. That's an in-kind project, and won't speak to the merits of it. That'll save that for future council decision. This area of the West End plan, along the Georgia corridor in particular, sought to seek cash to be able to deploy cash to other projects, whether it's the West End Community Center or other facilities in the area that need renewal and replacement or expansion. The project on Burrard did have inclusionary projects, so an in-kind childcare as well as the arts and space.
Okay.
A cultural hub. So again, it's more just how the West End plan was crafted for those areas to generate cash CACs to deploy to other facilities in the area.
Okay, thanks. That's enough for me. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Meisner.
Thanks. On the CACs themselves, what happens if these projects change? Let's say they go from strata to rental or they become a hotel. Is that, does that mean that those CACs would have to be renegotiated from the start? They would disappear essentially?
Effectively, so it depends on the degree of change, but if an applicant were to come in with a different project, that would trigger a withdraw, resubmit, and you restart the clock in the negotiation based on the merits of that project. So if an applicant came in to completely change their tenure and form and other things, that CAC proposal that you see would be rescinded, and then you'd be presented with a new public benefit depending on what that new offer was.
Okay. Are staff aware of any changes coming forth on any of those projects?
We've had inquiries from the applicants, the representatives of the project to explore, but no submissions, no applications yet.
Okay. And then on the proposed latest enactment date of May 31st, 2028, I guess my question is, if it was May 31st, 2028 right now, would your recommendation be the same for another further extension?
Fair question, and so this is, I think, the second or third time we've proposed the extension. What it's really doing is protecting the upset limit of the valuation to that date. It was always there intended to encourage projects to proceed and to take advantage of those rates. At the time, they were better than earlier negotiated rates in terms of valuation. So I think we would have to assess what it looked like in May 2028 if the market has returned, if the interest rates are still challenging, and have to reserve our comments for that point.
Okay, understand. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So, quick question. I might be wrong, but I remember when last time we grant this extension was the interest was prime plus 2%. Was that right? Or was always 1%?
So again, to decouple the two, until enactment, there is no interest applied, right? So enactment is when the rights and entitlements of the rezoning are secured, and at that point we trigger the CAC. We only have deferral terms with interest beyond enactment until the payment of the deferred cash. So right now, the new CAC policy is prime plus 1 as established from June 2025 when council made some modifications. So if these applicants did pursue the deferral, which I expect they probably would be interested, they'd have to pay $5 million prior to enactment, and then the balance would be deferred. And that deferral balance would be subject to interest accruing on a quarterly basis as well.
Okay, so last time when we do the extension, that was in 2024, I think?
Correct.
That's prime plus 2% at that time, right?
Again, to decouple the two, we aren't adjusting the value of the CAC as secured at public hearing today. It's only if they enact and then defer the balance. So we don't have an escalation clause between public hearing and enactment.
Okay.
It's only post-enactment.
Okay. Other questions. This is 2-year extension. So if they are able to proceed the project, let's say if the marketing is getting better, let's say next year, they can still do that, right?
Correct.
The latest day we can do the extension.
Correct. All the projects have development permits in the system. Most of them have got most of their agreements and conditions cleared. It would be a bit of a reactivation of the file and pick things up. But I think they are, if the market was there and there was a willingness, they have the full ability to proceed.
Okay. The last question is, do we have any regulation to see what is the maximum number of extension they can do?
That's really up to this council. The way the conditions are worded is really at your discretion to rescind, revisit, or extend the approval, and staff are suggesting 2-year increments just to see how the market conditions go, but it could certainly be a different timeline, and yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. That's all my questions. Thanks, Mayor.
Councillor Maloney.
Thank you. I've had a couple of inquiries about what the implications are for public infrastructure delivery timelines in the West End as a result of this. Can you explain how it works?
Yeah, sure. So effectively, rezonings and CAC contributions are one of the tools that we secure monies or in-kind facilities to help contribute to support growth in the community. Though we might forecast and anticipate projects to proceed, we actually don't use that from a budgeting perspective or a cost allocation perspective in the capital plan until they're received. So until that money is paid, it wouldn't show up in a capital plan as being funds available. We certainly have a forecast of where it could come in, but until that time, in the absence of those monies being paid, we're relying on other funding sources, whether it's DCL, CACs, taxes, or whatnot, to support the capital plan.
And there's not necessarily a connection between money that's paid for community amenity contributions and the area in which the development takes place?
A fair question. So CECs, from a policy perspective, are intended to support and offset the impacts of growth on the community that they're within. So our current CEC policy and the public benefit strategy for the West End contemplate that money being spent there, but it's certainly within Council's purview as part of your PIF exercise, the Public Infrastructure Investment Framework and our capital plan framework, as well as your city policies to determine how and where that money is ultimately deployed to.
Thanks. And what does happen if market conditions are still weak in 2028?
At that point, if the project isn't proceeding and we're kind of at the new due date of May 2028, the council has the option again to extend or to rescind or to revisit this at a public hearing as well. And between now and then, I'm sure we'll have more conversations with the applicants about what their intentions are.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, just following up on a question that was asked earlier, and I think it was phrased that some of the other projects were delivering community amenities or in kind, and this was not. Is the cash or the tens of millions of dollars of cash not the public benefit? It's just taken as cash versus in
Correct.
kind?
Yeah, that's correct.
And we're talking about, if I added up, something like $110 million conceptually?
Close to that, yeah.
Okay, which can do a lot for community amenities. And if these projects, if we don't create the conditions because the market is tough for these projects to move ahead and they don't build, we get zero to support community amenities, and we don't get the housing if they can't make it a go of it. Is that fair?
I think as I mentioned before, there was a slide in there that showed the different levers that might affect development. The city is one of them, and so are our policies, and the city has done a good job in both June last year and December this past year as well with development viability reports, cutting back on DCLs, being flexible on some of the unit layouts and the exclusions that are being explored, the BMR modifications where rental. So those are the kinds of things that the city has done and continues to do to help encourage projects moving forward. I would say this area of the downtown and the West End is high-end strata particularly, and that market is all but evaporated in the short term.
So reflecting back then, is it fair to say the city's changing a number of our levers to try to do what we can, but the market conditions may or may not recover to allow these projects to proceed?
That's a fair statement.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, seeing no, Councillor Montague.
No, I'm not on the queue.
Oh, we have gremlins. Okay, would someone like to move a motion? Great, Councillor Joe, I believe. Councillor Klassen is seconded. Council, is there any discussion? Okay, I'm now going to call the vote. If we can please go to the voting panel. Great, and that passes with Councillor Orr abstaining. Okay, and so that was item number 5. Thank you very much. Report number 6, CD-1 rezoning 717 through 743 West 28th Avenue. Before we begin this agenda item, if anyone believes they have a conflict of interest, now is the time to disclose it. Councillor Orr, you're lined up to speak, right? Not to. Okay, thank you. Okay. Seeing no one in the queue, this item does have a presentation. We do have team members to present this item unless someone wants to waive the presentation. Councillor Joe, seconded by Councillor Klassen. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor of waiving the presentation say yay. All those opposed say nay. Nay. So we'll hear the presentation, right? Let's hear the presentation. Or does it have to be unanimous? No? Okay, so we will waive the presentation. Sorry about that. Would the applicant like to make a presentation? Is the applicant online? No? Okay. Council, you have up to 5 minutes to ask questions of team members and the applicant. Are there any questions? Councillor Orr.
Thanks. Yeah, I really wanted to see that presentation. I think it's important, generally, since we're not doing the public hearings, to at least give the public some insight into what we're doing here. And so far, I believe I'm the only one that's pulled any of rezonings since the ODP, and it's really unfortunate that we keep waiving these presentations. I think we owe it to the public to just at least hear from the applicant and from staff. So this is a 6-story rental with 94 units and no below market rental. Can staff say why there's no below market rental?
Hi, my name's Kathy Joe, and I'm the rezoning planner for this application. Regarding the BMR, the site is located in Tier 3 of the TOA policy, which anticipates 20% of the residential floor area to be at 20% below CMHC rates. This proposal is for 100% market rental housing. During the process, during the application review, real estate staff reviewed a performer that was submitted and concluded that there isn't enough sufficient land lift value to support the inclusion of below market rental housing on the site. Even though the land lift was insufficient to support this 20%, the performer analysis demonstrated that there's still an increase in land value to support a community amenity contribution. During this process, the applicant negotiated a $250,000 CAC.
Okay, so I guess that's the end of my questions. Thanks.
Great. Would someone like to move a motion? Great. Councillor Klassen, seconded by Councillor Joe. Council, is there any discussion? Seeing no one in the queue, I will call the vote. If we can please go to the voting panel. And that passes with Councillor Fry abstaining and Councillor Orr in opposition. Okay, so we will move on now to report number 8, CD-1 rezoning 4339 through 4387 Cambie Street and 506 West 27th. Before we begin this agenda item, does anybody have a conflict of interest to declare? Okay, so this item does have a presentation. We do have team members here to present it, unless there's a motion to waive the presentation. Oh, okay. Please go ahead. Yep.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is Lauren Whitney, rezoning planner for this application being considered under the Cambie Corridor Plan. The site in red encompasses the block fronting the west side of Cambie Street between West 27th and West 28th Avenues. The neighborhood consists of a mix of single detached dwellings, townhouse developments, and 6-story residential buildings. The area is undergoing change under the Cambie Plan and Transit-Oriented Areas Rezoning Policy. The site is currently developed with 4 single detached dwellings with 4 existing tenants. All existing tenancies are eligible under the Tenant Relocation and Protection Policy. Under the official development plan, the site is identified as mixed-use mid-rise for buildings up to 12 stories. The proposal is in the Queen Elizabeth neighborhood of the Cambie Corridor Plan, which considers redevelopment for residential buildings up to 6 stories and a density between 2 and 2.5 FSR. While the plan sets out policy for residential uses at this location, the 2024 Cambie Corridor Commercial Demand Study identified a commercial use gap in this area, thereby permitting commercial in key locations. The site is in Tier 2 of the King Edward Station TOA, which allows up to 12 stories and 4 FSR. TOA policy seeks to secure either secured market rental with below market rental or strata with social housing. This proposal is offering a cash CAC in lieu of securing in-kind social housing. The TOA policy also allows for a negotiated approach to the CAC, where project viability contemplates alternative housing outcomes. The density within the TOA was considered when determining the supportable density of the subject site while considering project viability. The application proposes a 9-story mixed-use building with a density of 3.6 FSR. Their proposal includes 148 strata residential units and commercial space on the ground floor. The height and density beyond the plan's original policy support the addition of commercial at grade and the retention of a significant beech tree in the front yard. 72 submissions were received during the public consultation period. Support was expressed for new housing and density close to transit, the inclusion of family-sized units, the renewal of aging properties, and the addition of commercial space animating the street and providing local retail and services. Some respondents felt that the height and density were inappropriate for the area. Staff support the increase in height and density to provide ground floor commercial and the tree retention, as well as note general alignment with the policy context for the area, which allows up to 12 stories. Some commenters expressed concern that the addition of commercial space will negatively impact the character of the neighborhood. Staff support the addition of commercial in response to the 2024 commercial demand study, which identified a commercial use gap in this area. Lastly, some respondents felt the commercial space will negatively impact traffic and safety. Staff note that this location is well suited to reduce reliance on personal vehicles for transportation and is located 400 meters from the King Edward SkyTrain station. Additionally, the on-site parking for both residential and commercial uses has been conditioned per the parking bylaw. The public benefits from this application include a cash CAC of $4 million, DCL contributions of $4.7 million, and a public art contribution of $280,000, with a combined value of almost $9 million. In summary, staff have concluded that this proposal is generally in alignment with the Canby Corridor Plan and support the application subject to conditions in Appendix B. Staff and the applicant team are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would the applicant like to make a presentation?
Yes, if I may, very briefly, my name is Michael Geller. I've been the planning consultant on this project for the last few years. I'm joined today by Yazi Navidi, an architect with Fouad Rafi, and the developer Majid Sharaka of Aria Pacific. I think, first of all, we do want to thank the staff for their guidance throughout this process. The only thing I would like to mention in light of the previous discussions that I've been listening to is that this project is indeed providing almost $9 million in public benefits. The other thing is we have modified the design to accommodate a significant tree. We did also modify the design to accommodate what we think will be good neighborhood retail, which reinforces the character of the street. The last thing I will mention, as was previously noted, there is a concern about the financial viability of a lot of these projects, including ownership projects. A term has been developed within the real estate community. Projects that get approved and don't proceed are referred to as the ghost pipeline. And we are trying very hard to make sure that this project will indeed proceed, deliver almost $9 million in financial benefits, and not be part of the ghost pipeline. With that, we're pleased to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Council, you have up to 5 minutes to ask questions of team members and the applicant. Are there any questions, Councillor Orr?
Thank you. Then thank you to Michael Geller there for being so frank and answering a lot of my questions before I asked them. And that's a lot of it. That's what I was getting at by pulling this. In terms of just seeing that strata is sort of not viable in some areas, obviously because of land value, and viable in certain other areas. And I asked staff, I think, I can't remember the answer, but just in terms of the number of unsold units of strata that we have currently, if that answer ever came back, I didn't get an answer. It was staff were going to get back to me. There's numbers out there where it's upwards of 10,000 in the region, 2,500 in the actual city, or
Is this on? Hi, I'm Lauren, the rezoning planner, and I see Templar right behind me.
It might be coming out of a long weekend. I cannot remember the number off the top of my head, but it's several thousand. And if you give us just a few minutes, we'll try to get you the exact number, but it's in the thousands of unsold units.
Okay. I don't have any other questions, so if you want to take the rest of my time, I've got 3 or 4 minutes. Or you could advance Councillor Fry.
Councillor Fry?
Yeah, thanks. So that $4 million cash in lieu of social housing, can you walk me through what the Canby Corridor Plan public benefit strategy would allocate that CAC money for? Is it staying in some sort of housing bucket, or is it going to amenities outside?
Yeah, thank you for your question. The Canby Quarter Plan PBS envisions a number of different buckets that $4 million could go toward. Areas that are currently still requiring progress would be childcare and housing, as an example, as well as community spaces. So while we don't have anything identified specifically, those are 3 buckets that the Canby Corridor PBS has identified as requiring work.
So sorry, childcare, housing, and public spaces?
Community spaces. Yeah.
Right, okay. So does the Canby Corridor public benefit strategy contemplate delivery of housing in any kind of more specific targets?
Specifically,
I guess where I'm going with this is my concern that we're not delivering on appropriate below market housing in tandem with development. And I appreciate that it might not work in this building, but I would like to see it delivered in the context of TOA and in the context of Canby Corridor.
Yeah, absolutely. I can speak specifically to the policy in this area. There is no below market housing option, social or BMR contemplated or required. But for the public benefit strategy as a whole, I'm going to hand that over to Teen.
Thanks, Councillor Fry. My name is Teen. I'm one of the senior planners. Yes, the Canby Corridor Public Benefit Strategy does identify a range of housing options in terms of where cash allocation could go. We've got co-op housing, social housing, and as 2 examples, yes.
But it's very specifically going to stay within that area, the Canby Corridor.
Do you mean the cash allocation in terms of where projects are realized?
If this money was to go towards below market housing in lieu of as a cash contribution,
I see.
Would it stay in that area?
It could. CACs are intended to be in the location for which the development is within some close proximity in terms of an area plan. So we would like to see the cash CAC allocated towards the Canby Corridor area. However, there are opportunities to collect that money and maybe reallocate it to an area for which there possibly could be a bigger need.
Okay, I guess I would like to see a little bit more detail on that in the report, but that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Orr?
Thanks. I was wondering if staff have any.
Thank you for the time. It's as of December 2025, the Metro Vancouver unsold inventory for condominium strata was 3,800.
3,800.
This data is from CMHC.
In Metro Van.
Metro Van.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Okay, would someone like to move a motion? Oh, sorry, Councillor Meisner.
Sorry, Templar. Just Councillor Orr's the response to his question. That's the whole region, though. That's
Correct.
Burnaby, Surrey, et cetera, et cetera. Do we have numbers for Vancouver, City of Vancouver?
I don't have it on hand. This is again data from CMHC, and it was kind of aggregated in the Metro perspective. It's hard to speculate exactly how much, but a percentage of that would be Vancouver.
Okay. We don't know, though.
My guess would be somewhere under a third of that, but below a third, but yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Maloney.
Yeah, and I also want to follow on from that, just in case you were going to sit down and have a rest. So that's 3,800 unsold strata units for the region. Can you give us some context for that? Because we do often get people who are worried that we shouldn't be approving more housing because there are loads of unsold or unoccupied units. Can you give us some context about how much 3,800 housing units are compared to some larger figure of how many total housing units there are, or something that's more, that gives people more context for the percentage that is?
A fair question, and so 3,800 on a metro-wide basis is not an insignificant number of unsold inventory. I could say from our Housing Vancouver strategy over 10 years, we've got, I think, 10,000 strata units, give or take, projected for that 10-year period, so call it 1,000 a year kind of thing. We've got at least that in our pipeline already for projects. I think at one point I was looking at the numbers recently, there's about 30,000 rental units that have been approved, but we've got another 4,000 or 5,000 of strata units in the pipeline over large sites and major projects. They do take time to absorb and build out. So, from a Vancouver perspective, having the right amount of supply is healthy for the industry and for the market to absorb so that you don't get these, excessive price escalations. But having that extent of unsold inventory and what's already approved in the pipeline is quite a robust amount of strata units in the pipeline already that's already been approved but not yet constructed.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. Okay, would someone like to move a motion? Great, thank you, Councillor Dominato, seconded by Councillor Joe. Council, is there any discussion? Seeing none, let's call the vote. Great, and that passes unanimously. And that
Thank you very much.
That completes item number 8. Okay, so now we are on report number 11. Fast tracking rental housing updates to residential rental districts. Before we begin, does anybody need to declare a conflict of interest? Okay, this item does have a presentation. We do have team members here to present it unless someone wants to waive the presentation. All right, seeing no one putting up their hand, the team wants to present, that'd be great.
Great, thank you so much. Hello, Mayor and Council. I'm Maggie Moore, a planner in housing policy. Today, I'm sharing the proposed changes to the residential rental districts. I will start with an overview of the recommendations you have in front of you today. Then I'll talk through the current state of the city's housing targets, the city's policy objectives that relate to this proposal, as well as where we're at with our current residential rental districts. Then we'll get into today's recommendations, which are the proposed updates to these districts. I'll talk through engagement and what we've heard, as well as a summary and next steps. So looking at the recommendations you have, recommendation A includes changes to the RR2 and RR3 district schedules, including removing below market rental requirements for fully residential development, removing or reducing requirements in mixed-use developments, and allowing up to 8 stories in the RR2 districts to be compliant with TOA legislation. Recommendations B and C include applying the district changes to 4 current in-stream projects. Basically, we're slotting these 4 projects into the correct district schedule to support their development viability. This also includes terminating their existing approval in principle. And then recommendations D and E include consequential changes to the secured rental policy and other bylaws and policies, including the subdivision bylaw and the sign bylaw. So looking at the Vancouver housing targets, one of the values of the Housing Vancouver strategy is for housing to respond to the diversity of people and households that call Vancouver home. To measure this, the 10-year housing targets outline the specific type and quantity of housing planned. The overall goal is for 83,000 units. Today, we're focusing on these 2 middle categories of rental housing that are highlighted here. The purpose-built below market rental and purpose-built market rental, representing 43% of the city's overall target. And while we've been very successful in developing new units and enabling supply through zoning, there's been difficulty in the market delivering deeper affordability, especially in these low-rise districts. We'll share data throughout this presentation on what types of projects we've seen approved and make it to construction in the residential rental districts. Overall, we've seen that delivering below market rental through private development in these low-rise zones can be very difficult and only shows viability in certain types of projects in certain areas of the city. Delivering more of these types of projects could require a greater investment from different areas of government, and we need to continue to work on partnerships with other levels of government on the ability to deliver below market rental units. So looking at what's been approved so far, close to 50 projects in the residential rental districts have been approved since the districts came online in 2021. These projects include close to 3,500 secured rental units. However, only 5%, which is a very small portion of these units, are below market. This data shows that the secured rental policy in the RR districts have been really successful in delivering market rental of these low-rise, middle-density housing options, but it's been difficult to get the below-market rental units. We've also seen a couple of projects canceled and many other projects coming to the city asking for added support and reduction in below-market rental units. There are a few reasons why this has been the case, including increasing costs of development. This slide is not showing any new information. We know that there have been rising costs of construction. These rising costs are making it increasingly difficult to deliver the secured market rental housing, and even more so for projects that have the below market rental included. And as mentioned on the last slide, while units have been approved, we're seeing the rising costs of construction continue to make it difficult to deliver these units. Since 2021, no BMR units have been delivered from the residential rental districts. And while some, close to 50 units, are currently under construction, many others are failing to get to the construction phase. So looking at it from a policy context, based on the data and the projects we've seen, we're proposing changes to the residential rental districts to ensure that the projects can continue. These changes are being proposed under the secured rental policy developed in 2019 to promote the development of secured market rental housing, and the development viability report, which was brought to council in December 2025, which proposed a set of measures to address immediate development viability challenges, including this one. In December 2021, Council approved amendments to the secured rental policy to create new rental residential districts near shopping and transit. Similar to other standard zoning districts, the RR zone set regulations such as permitted use, density, and height limits while allowing for a range of building designs. All residential uses in the RR zones are secured as rental tenure, and no stratification or sale of individual residential units is allowed. These requirements are secured through housing agreements. And the RR districts include options for 4 to 6 story fully residential and mixed use developments. The aim of allowing these projects is to develop complete communities, including the options on retail streets that allow for retail on the ground floor and apartments above to support these neighborhoods. When the zones were created in 2021, all 6-story projects on arterials were required to provide below market rental units based on the financial testing done at the time. So I'm going to go into a little more detail on what the districts look like and what the proposed changes are. The RR2A, RR2B, and RR2C district schedules currently allow apartment buildings at 4, 5, or 6 stories, where all dwelling units are secured as residential rental tenure. The 6-story option requires 20% of residential floor area to be secured as below market rental. Focusing just on the 5 and 6-story option, the RR2B and RR2C, we've seen close to 30 projects approved since 2021. However, we've seen over 10 times more projects come in under the 5-story option without BMR units than the 6-story RR2C option. And while we've seen some 5-story projects completed, we haven't seen any of the 6-story projects completed or even have their zoning enacted. Because the 5-story option is being opted for a lot more frequently, we're losing out on that 6th story of rental units. If all of these 5-story buildings had been approved as 6 stories, we could have seen up to 400 more rental units approved in just a few years. Moving on to the mixed-use RR3 district. There are currently 2 options, 4 stories at 100% market rental and 6-story with a below market rental requirement. Looking at what we've seen in the mixed-use projects, we've seen a different trend than in the fully residential projects. Overall, we have not seen a lot of these projects and many are struggling. There have been no projects in this district that have been completed and some have asked for adjustments to the below market rental inclusion. As you can see from this map, we are seeing a majority of projects opt into doing 6 stories with the BMR requirement. However, 3 times as many are doing this on the west side of the city, and the only 4-story projects we've seen have come in on the east side of the city. An important part of complete communities is to ensure we're getting these mixed-use projects and we're not getting a lot of uptake. Current conditions are making this even more difficult. We really want to make sure we get the retail Through our financial testing and the projects that are coming in, we've seen that the BMR units are more viable on the west side of the city, although they still face some difficulties for delivery. The difference between east and west could be from a variety of factors, including lot size differences across the city and the going market rents that are feasible for those market rental units. So looking at those changes specifically to the RR3 districts, we're proposing removing the below market rental requirement in 6-story buildings on the east side of the city where they're more difficult to deliver, and reducing the below market rental requirement on the west side from a 20% discount below CMHC average rents to a 10% discount. This would allow us to get more mixed-use rental buildings throughout the city, contributing to those complete communities. So looking at an overview slide here, this includes what we propose the districts to look like with the changes highlighted in purple. So in the RR2A, that fully residential district, we're looking at a 4-story option and a 6-story option with no longer below market rental requirements in 6 stories. And then 3 mixed-use districts, a 4-story option and 2 separate 6-story options with different levels of affordability requirements based on location. So removing the below market rental on the east side of the city. And some other proposed changes consistent with simplification approaches implemented with new district schedules. Updates are recommended to the existing RR2A, RR2B, and RR2C district schedules, and the RR3A and RR3B district schedule. This includes removing design guidelines and relocating affordable housing requirements. And then in order to be compliant with provincial legislation, we've added in an 8-story 3.0 FSR option for RR2B sites in transit-oriented areas for existing in-stream projects. So looking at recommendations B and C, based on these proposed zoning changes, there are 4 in-stream projects that have been approved for rezoning to an RR district that we're proposing moving to the appropriate district. This includes 2 projects currently in RR2C, which we're repealing, and 2 mixed-use projects on the east side. Recommendations B and C include changing the approval for these 4 projects to align them with the correct district. There are also a number of in-stream applications for residential rental districts. Staff will continue to process all in-stream rezoning inquiries and applications. This applies to all projects which have already submitted a formal rezoning application or a formal rezoning inquiry prior to the date this report is brought to council. Staff will begin accepting new development permit applications after enactment. So looking at the engagement we did and what we heard, from November 2025 to January 2026, we connected with residents in the development community through online information sessions and surveys. Engagement included a Shape Your City page and virtual open houses. From the public, we heard support for building more 6-story buildings that feel human-scaled and fit well into existing neighborhoods. We've heard a lot of support from the development community on streamlining development and implementing these changes as soon as possible. We also heard concerns about the 6-story building heights fitting into existing neighborhood character. 6 stories is already allowed in most sites through the current RR rezoning process, so this isn't being added to those areas. However, the 8 stories is new in these, but this is consistent with the TOA legislation. In addition, we heard concerns about reducing the requirements for below-market rental housing units. This is being proposed due to current economic conditions and decreased viability of requiring the below-market rental units in these low-rise districts. We've seen this through the numbers of what's being developed. Existing requirements have produced minimal below-market rental units, approximately 5% of the approved units so far. The proposal maintains requirements for the below-market rental units in areas where the market is more likely to deliver them. So, in summary, the changes we're proposing today to the residential rental districts would improve development viability of secured market rental housing and simplify some of the regulations in these districts. I'll also note that there were report revisions on May 15th to clarify some mistakes that were made in the report, including FSR allowances, BMR rates, and heights and TOAs. If this is approved, the bylaws would be brought forward for enactment in June, and new applications using the updated district schedules could come in after that date. Staff will continue working through implementation of existing in-stream applications. And staff will also continue intergovernmental conversations on the tools available to the city for delivering below-market housing. And that's my presentation.
Great, thank you very much. Council, you have up to 5 minutes to ask questions of team members. Councillor Orr.
Thanks for the presentation. Again, answered a lot of my questions. Just in terms of BMR, we're not hearing, we're hearing that it's affecting project viability. But I've also heard, anecdotally that even, 20% isn't that affordable anyways. So for example, if say the average CMHC rent is $2,000 for a 1-bedroom, 20% below that is $1,600. You'd have to make $5,300 a month to afford that. Has staff done an impact report on how many residents earning $50,000 to $80,000 would be excluded under the 2,348 rezoned properties if the BMR is reduced or removed?
I'm going to invite Edna to come share.
Morning, Council. I'm Edna Cho, Senior Planner in Housing Policy. The answer to your question is no, we didn't do that analysis for this work. We were looking at what was financially feasible in terms of these projects.
So really just focused on getting the projects done and not the affordability for people who make around that.
I would say that we are focused on preserving the affordability where it works. That's why we're preserving the mixed use option for BMR at 10% discount because that shows to still be feasible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then as Maggie alluded to in her presentation, we have other mechanisms to try to gain affordability. And we also know that we're going to have to step up our efforts to do more advocacy with senior governments to try to get more deeper levels of affordability.
No, I appreciate that. And that really stood out to me in the report was that we do need this, but advocacy is one thing, but we're being told over and over again at from senior levels, especially the province, that we don't have any money. The province is broke. So why, if that's the case, why are we then getting rid of the only thing that we have? You're saying it's not working, we're not building enough, but it's kind of the bare minimum that we're doing here. And then we're saying, oh, okay, well, we'll just advocate to the province, but the province is broke. I don't see how we square that kind of circle.
Again, we're preserving the below market rental where it works in the mixed use projects. As we show through the data, primarily we're getting almost all market rental projects right now. So, to change the 5-story to 6 stories will ensure that those projects continue to be viable and to ensure that we get that extra story, that extra, could be 400 units on the table.
Right. So I think the number was 5% that we're getting from BMR. How much do we expect going forward? That will increase or decrease?
You mean
for the new projects, if we're getting rid of BMR, we're saying that these projects aren't delivering BMR, so we're getting rid of BMR to make the projects happen. So we're going to have even less BMR.
Yes, that's correct. In the fully residential projects.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then so for the 5-story versus 6-story buildings, we're saying we're getting more applicants to choose the 5-story buildings because of the requirements on the 6 stories. So why wouldn't we just make it so that 5 stories have to have BMR instead of going the other direction and reducing BMR for 6 stories?
The 5 stories wouldn't.
Why wouldn't we go the other direction in terms of requiring affordability down the line that way from 5 stories, 4 stories?
Because
instead of just getting rid of the 6-story one.
Because it doesn't work. Like if we layered a BMR requirement to the 5 stories, it wouldn't be feasible. Then we wouldn't be able to get any of the development.
Okay. Does this send a sort of a message to developers that if we just wait long enough, we'll just kind of, you know, retroactively reduce their requirements? I mean, this is the kind of seems like the kind of message that we're saying, like, oh, we can't build anything. We're not going to, and so the city needs to do something, you know.
Yeah. Councillor Dan Garrison, Director of Housing Policy and Regulation, just wanted to jump in on that question. Really, if you take a step back and you look at what we're doing
I'm
here.
sorry, we're at time.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thank you. I have some questions that might, maybe that'll help. My first question is really, I guess, around recognizing the challenging times we're in, just asking the kind of so what question. Are we chasing the right paradigm? And so I know that the report references that a comprehensive review and update the city's development contribution tools, including DCLs, is underway. I'm specifically interested to know if that review will be looking at something like, is the city better off to take cash than requiring inclusionary zoning and below market units that could be then used, for example, to support community amenities or contributed to nonprofit housing projects, as opposed to getting a small amount and discount affordability? Will that type of analysis be looked at as to whether we should take a very different approach to affordability versus BMR?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Dan Garrison, Housing Policy and Regulation. I think the review that's coming up, we're going to look holistically at where we're doing inclusionary housing and what's the best way to deliver the deepest level of affordability, as well as looking at how the city deals with our other infrastructure and public amenity needs. So I think if you look at BMR, what we're proposing here, of course, is to remove the BMR requirements from lower density development, which will then largely start to pay things like development cost levies, et cetera. The higher density development, like in TOA areas in the Broadway plan, is the area where we still think more inclusionary housing, more BMR, et cetera, is possible.
Okay.
In the short-term review, we're going to be looking at mostly legislative compliance with the new Bill 16 requirements.
So can I just interject,
yeah.
just for time? I know you have lots of great information on this topic, but I guess if you said, you're already stating that you think that in the higher density projects, for example, that's a better alternative, but will that analysis be done and information provided to council on alternatives that you could continue to have BMR, distinguishing between lower rise and more density, or it could generate this amount of cash that could go to support, for example, nonprofit projects? Will we explicitly get that type of information on what the trade-offs are?
Yeah, in the short-term review, we are mostly looking at legislative compliance. So it's sort of taking what our existing constructs are and making them comply with the legislation. We are also looking at launching the major inclusionary review, where we do look at exactly what you're talking about. Really, the market has changed fundamentally from where it was when most of our inclusionary housing policies and zoning.
I understand, and sometimes we need to pivot. When will that broader review happen?
We're looking at launching that essentially immediately, and it's probably going to take us a little bit of time. It's not going to be in June or July. It's going to be probably in 2027.
Okay. That's clear. I do think that we need to revisit how we best within the city levers achieve affordability.
Yeah, we agree.
My second question is really around, it wasn't covered as directly, I think, in the report, but can you kind of speak to us as the city is going towards now more pre-enabled zoning? So whether it's either through the TOA legislation, the recent adoption of the ODP, et cetera, which creates a different paradigm when someone's bringing a project forward because you have broad density and entitlements, as opposed to rezonings where you got extra FSR and sometimes more land lift. So are we trading off? Are we seeing, can you talk about how that's intersecting, for example? Is that helping us move housing along faster, but we're not seeing as much land lift? And I know that it's complicated because there's many factors, but just interested in general perspective on that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the really key pieces that we're doing, is shifting our development approvals approach towards more certainty, more clarity, and that happens with the district schedule approach. So this work that we're doing right now is sort of that middle ground where it's a rezoning, but directly to a district schedule that's already established. When we come forward with the villages, which a planning program, which this work is really aligned with, that's going to be the next major step in pre-zoning proposals, where we do look at that certainty. So, I think actually the pre-zoning approach creates a real opportunity around particularly development viability, where there's more certainty. The processes of approval are faster. There's sort of less money involved in that process. So I think that's an important step.
Okay. And if the approval's faster, then it mitigates some of the costs.
Lower carrying costs, less uncertainty, less risk involved in development. So it certainly, we think at that point, we're going to be seeing improvements in development viability through that approval approach.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Fry.
Yeah, I guess just off the top, can you walk through why this is not eligible for public comment and why it's not coming to public hearing?
I'll invite Edna up to answer this one.
Thanks for the question. So there's been changes to our public hearing rules from the provincial legislation. And so under the new rules, a public hearing is prohibited if a project is consistent with the ODP, where the changes are primarily residential in nature, and at least 50% of the residential gross floor area, the buildings will be for residential. So because these changes meet all those three criteria, a public hearing is prohibited. And so that's why this report is being brought to Daytime Council today.
So I was of the impression that ODP was really a land use, not and that we've disaggregated sort of housing policies like inclusionary zoning from the actual ODP. Because I seem to recall in previous items that we couldn't discuss ODP because or inclusionary because it wasn't part of ODP. Are we being consistent with the application here?
We are. The ODP governs land use, but it also governs housing policies. And these, yeah. So we are being consistent, yeah, with the application of the new rules.
Okay, so so elsewhere, it in this report, it references the report from December, the amendment to report back on supporting development viability and unlocking new housing supply, which asked to look at including but not limited to reducing the required proportion of below market units. Are there no other options being considered? Like we didn't get any other options to support housing viability other than eliminating below market. Were there no other options considered or viable?
In terms of city tools, this is what's available to us in terms of land use tools. Yeah.
So not TCL waivers or increased density to include the BMR.
Well, this is
we didn't model that
in the low rise. Like we're already up to 6 stories, so there's really no room to go in the low rise form. Otherwise, as Dan mentioned earlier, we can do the below market rental in the high rise developments, which we are doing through Cambie and Broadway and in the R5 district schedules. And these projects already get 100% DCL waivers for the BMR, so that's already in play. So I think it's just a very difficult time right now in the market with the construction costs and the uncertainty in the environment around tariffs as well. We are seeing new rental rates falling, which is great news for renters, but that does mean it's even more challenging for the projects to work. So within the tools we have available within the 6-story form, this is what the city can do. But however, we agree that preserving affordability is really important, and that's why we're preserving it in the mixed use option on the west side, because that's still looking to be feasible.
But just to be clear from your presentation, the 5 stories are penciling out fine. It's just the 6 stories that aren't working, and specifically 6 stories with the inclusion of BMR.
The testing results show that even if a new project were to go forward today, the 5 stories is also challenged. It's more challenged than it was in 2021. What we're talking, but a lot of these projects that we were showing in the pipeline, they're ones that were approved previously or in the system already. So there are challenges that are being faced by new projects, but right now those ones, because they're proceeding, they look to be viable. And as you can see, there's a lot more of them than the below market 6-story option, which isn't. The testing results show they're not viable.
So when we zoom out from the building and the pro forma on a building, does the planning consider what it means for neighborhoods when we lose below market units as part of the fabric of a larger neighborhood?
I think when we put these changes in place in 2021, we were very hopeful that we could get, the diversity of
And
the.
I'm sorry, we're at time, but I'm sure Councillor Maloney would love to hear that answer.
Yeah, I've got loads of questions, but please finish that.
Oh, okay. In 2021, when we put forward the policy, we really wanted to see the full spectrum of the different forms as well as the affordability, and so that was the intent. And I think, with the experience we have now, it's showing that the BMR was a really great idea on paper, but it's just not penciling out. So we are, we're getting 97% of the market rental. That's working really well, but we're getting very few projects in the below market rental. So it's really kind of on paper at this point.
Thank you. So how does this fit with the single stair egress typology work in terms of minimum frontage sizes? Because I note that it's 66 feet, which is 2 standard lots. When are we going to get, at what stage of the planning process will we be looking at integrating single stair typology on single lots, like below 50?
Marie Lenahan, development planner. So the building code changes have been made to allow the single egress stairs. So these apartment buildings can make use of that. They can choose to do the single egress stairs. I think the change you're mentioning is allowing apartment buildings on smaller lots. And that's coming through with the R3, with the update to R3, which will come with the villages. Because we anticipate that the single egress stairs has the most benefit on these smaller lots for efficiency. So that's coming forward with the village's work.
Wonderful, thanks for clarifying that. So what would be the effect of council opposing this change today in terms of development viability challenges? It would just mean that 6-storey apartments continue not to be built. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, and so that is really what Michael Geller was referring to with the ghost pipeline, things that have been approved but just aren't financially viable to build.
That's correct. Yeah, we're hearing projects running into difficulties and applicants coming back requesting changes. Yep.
Yeah, and so the effect of that is 20% BMR, 20% of nothing is nothing.
That's correct. If it doesn't get built.
Yeah. All right. And what effect does additional market housing supply have on the overall affordability of housing?
Additional supply can increase the vacancy rate, which means there's more competition for renters, more choice, and it brings down the rents. And we're already seeing a reduction in rents. I think 1.4% down from last year. So it is happening. Rents are still high, but with a sustained pipeline, that trend will likely continue, that decrease in rents.
And speaking to developers recently, I've heard that, we've got buildings in the pipeline that are being built for the next couple of years, but then it's really going to grind to a halt once the projects that are in process are finished. Do you think that approving this today will help contribute to more housing being in the pipeline at that 2-year point?
Yes, we do. We think that that's really important. A sustained pipeline is really important. We have, 10,000 units under construction, but beyond that, there's lots in the pipeline, but unsure where they will go. So having more units go into the pipeline will be really important, so that we're not, making great changes now, but then there's a stop, and then, we're back to where we were 10 years ago.
And what would be the general effect of having a more significant lack of housing in the pipeline at that point when current construction's completed?
Well, then
volatility of housing prices.
Then the rents will rise again, and there will be less choice for renters, and there will just be a tighter market.
Yeah, and so what solutions, very quickly, just generally, are within the city's power to contribute to housing affordability?
So within the city's power, we have our land use tools. So we have density. We can offer density, DCL waivers. We can look at land use, different forms of development. So those are our main tools. And waiving DCL charges. Those are the city's main tools.
So things like allowing more density in the villages plan is something that's going to have a positive effect on housing affordability.
That's correct. It will have more effect on more choice for renters and for owners, and more diversity for
And I'm sorry,
households.
we're at time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so council, you have up to 5 minutes to ask questions. Can we get a mover of the motion? Okay, thank you, Councillor Meisner and Councillor Dominato seconded. Council, is there any discussion? Seeing no one in the queue, I'm going to call the vote. Great, and that passes with Councillor Fry abstaining and Councillor Orr in opposition. Okay, so the next item on the docket is referral report number 2, CD-1 rezoning 1500 through 1580 West 3rd Avenue. Before we begin this agenda item, does anybody have a conflict that they have to disclose? No? Okay, this item does not have a team member presentation. Councillor Orr, you held this item, so you have up to 5 minutes to ask questions of team members.
Thanks so much. Sorry, this is all moving very quickly, but I did put an amendment. I do think that this referral report should go to a public hearing.
Can I just get you to the amendment queue, please? Oh, okay. So back to the main queue. So clerk, does that mean we have to move the motion first? Okay. All right. Councillor Orr, please go ahead if you want to move that as the main motion.
Okay, that's a new motion then?
Okay.
Okay, yeah, that'll be,
Great.
I put that forward.
And do you have a seconder? Is there a seconder? Okay. Great. Councillor Orr, please go ahead.
Yeah, pretty straightforward. I just, I think in terms of that staff say that this is conspicuously tall and out of scale, and that the report says 0 tower separation, which will prevent adjacent lots from ever redeveloping, and that the report claims that GLU will consider opportunities for hotel use near rapid transit areas. The report notes that this is a tier 3, but the proposal exceeds the height and density for the TOA designation, which would limit this to 8 stories. So I do believe, considering these things in the report, that we should hear from the public on this particular application. So that's my proposal.
Okay. Councillor Fry.
Sorry, I'm just trying to follow this last minute. Is this not being referred to public hearing in the first place? I'm sorry, Mayor. Maybe question through you to the city manager or director of planning or whoever is appropriate to answer this, because I'm a bit confused. I was of the impression this was being referred to public hearing.
Austin Nori, rezoning planner on the line. This application is being referred to a regular council meeting, not a public hearing. It's eligible to do so because it is consistent with the Vancouver ODP and is consistent with the Broadway plan as well as the hotel development policy.
Okay, thank you. Then, yeah, that's it for me then. Thank you.
Okay. Council, is there any other discussion? All right. Seeing no one else in the queue, we will put Councillor Orr's sorry, clerk, what would you call it? An amended motion? Well, just it's a main motion by Councillor Orr to a vote. If we can please go to the voting panel. And is Councillor Bly online or is she absent? Okay. All right. Well, that fails with Mayor Sim, Councillors Kirby Young, Dominato, Montague, Klassen, Meisner, and Joe in opposition, and Councillor Bly absent, and Councillor Maloney abstaining. Okay. So, sort of, clerk. Then, do we go back to the? Okay. If someone would like to move another main motion back to get us back to where we were, Councillor Joe, seconded by Councillor Klassen. Sorry, beat you to the punch there. Okay. So now we are back to where we were at the beginning. And council, is there any discussion? Seeing no one in the queue, I'm going to put this one to a vote.
Mayor, if I could have a vote assistant in favor, please.
You sure can. Great. And so that passes with Councillor Orr in opposition and Councillor Fry abstaining. That concludes referral report number 2. Now we're going to go to bylaws. Thank you very much. We have 14 bylaws on the agenda for enactment. Before we begin this agenda item, if anyone believes that they have a conflict of interest, now's the time to declare it. Does anybody have a conflict to disclose? Seeing no one in the queue. Council members who were absent for the meetings related to public hearing enactment bylaws must confirm that they've reviewed the proceedings of the meetings, including the video clip, to be eligible to vote. Okay, bylaw number 1 was from the public hearing on March the 11th, 2025. Councillors Bly, Fry, Maloney, and Orr were absent for this item at the public hearing. Councillor Bly, have you reviewed the proceedings and will you be voting on the enactment?
I have and I will.
Great, thank you. Councillor Fry?
I have and I will.
Councillor Maloney? Great. Councillor Orr? Bylaws 7 and 10 were from the public hearing on May the 5th and 7th, 2026. Councillors Meisner, Orr, and myself were absent for this item at the public hearing. Councillor Meisner, have you reviewed the proceedings and will you be voting on the enactments?
I have not and I will not.
Councillor Orr? Great. I have not and will not. We're going to need to adopt bylaw number 1 prior to voting on bylaws 2 through 14, as bylaws 2 and 3 were subject to approval of bylaw 1. Would someone like to move the motion to adopt bylaw number 1? Councillor Klassen, seconded by Councillor Joe. Thank you. Council, is there any discussion? All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great. The motion carries unanimously. So would someone like to move the motion to adopt bylaws 2 through 14? Councillor Dominato, seconded by Councillor Joe. Thank you very much. Council, is there any discussion? All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay.
Yay.
I believe that was a yay. Okay, the motion carries unanimously. Okay, the list of approved bylaws can be found on the city's website. Administrative motions. Number 1, fast tracking rental housing and small hotels, new mixed use commercial district. Before we begin this agenda item, is there a conflict that anyone needs to declare? No. Council, are there any questions to team members? Okay, would someone like to move the motion? Councillor Klassen, seconded by Councillor Dominato. Council, is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Are there notices of council member motions for upcoming standing committee meetings? A reminder to please state the title of the motion and the date of the standing committee meeting on which you intend to move the motion. And be sure to send the title and date to the standing committee, date of the standing committee meeting via email to the clerk. Councillor Dominato.
Yes, thanks. A notice of motion for the June 3rd Standing Committee advancing means prevention fencing on the Granville Street Bridge.
Thank you. Councillor Kirby Young.
For new business when you're there.
Okay, so I'll just Councillor Orr.
Yeah, a motion, 3 motions for the standing committee on June 3rd. A motion titled More Than Zero, Integrity and Accountability for Staff and Department Changes. A motion titled Protecting Tenants at 75 East 8th Avenue through the Tenant Relocation and Protection Policy Review. and a motion titled Creating a Low-Income Transit Pass to Increase Efficiency, Ridership, and Equity. Thank you.
Councillor Maloney.
Two motions for the Standing Committee meeting of the 3rd of June. The first one is just from me calling for the reinstatement of provincial climate resilience funding. And the second one I'm moving with Councillor Orr, which is recognising National Accessibility Week as an official City of Vancouver observance.
Thank you very much. Great.
Mayor, Councillor Bly, if I could go on the queue, point of
Yes,
privilege, please.
please go ahead.
One motion, for, notice a motion for June 3rd at Pride in Vancouver, strengthening and celebrating the Vancouver Pride Festival.
Thank you very much. Okay. Seeing no one else in the queue, we're going to move on to new business. We have one item of new business on the agenda today, and that's requests for leaves of absence. This motion has been circulated to council at the beginning of the meeting and is available on the screen. So why don't we all take a look at the screen just to make sure it captures everything. Right. Does anybody need more time to review that? No. So you're going to, yep. Okay. Does that happen here or does it happen as a separate item? Why don't we just do amended so it's all in one place? Is that okay, everyone? Great. Okay. I guess we would need a seconder. Councillor Klassen, thank you very much. We can just put that up on the screen. Oh, it's just coming now. Thank you, everyone.
It's just you've got it now, but it's for July 31st LOA all day for personal reasons. Thank you.
Great. And that's been updated now? Perfect. Okay. I think we moved the motion, right? And we had a seconder? Perfect. Okay, all those in favor say yay. Sorry, let me rewind back here. We're voting on the amendment, right? Yes, sorry, just to be clear. So we're voting on Councillor Dominato's amendment. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, that motion carries unanimously. And now we will put the new business as amended, the request for leaves of absence to a vote. All those in favor say yay. Great. All those opposed say nay.
Yay.
Right. That passes unanimously as well. Council, are there any other items of new business? Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I have emailed an urgent motion around to council, and with council support, I'd like to introduce it now, if I could. Should I go ahead?
Please go ahead. And do we need a seconder? Yep. Can we? Great. Councillor Klassen, thank you very much. Councillor, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Everybody, I think, has heard in the news over the last week about the preemptive closure mandated due to FIFA of the, excuse me, the BC Sports Hall of Fame. And I think that this came as a surprise to a lot of people. Not that FIFA doesn't have the right to access the spaces, but it came so late. And so they are required to close a venue that really, ironically, is about showcasing British Columbia's rich sports history to the world. And no better time to do that when we're actually welcoming the world here through FIFA. And it's a key time of the year for the museum, typically in the summertime, with visitors coming in. And so they're required to close. I think that the second part that's been really egregious and disappointing is that they have been asked to close with no compensation whatsoever, and no plan B to operate. So you have staff that are essentially out of work for a couple of months, and the museum has lost its ability to really showcase that rich history when we have national heroes like Terry Fox and others, and such a rich history of sport across our province. And so the motion that I am proposing, which is entitled Showcasing British Columbia's Sporting Legacy During FIFA World Cup by temporarily hosting the BC Sports Hall of Fame at Vancouver City Hall. And what it does is I think that rather than let this, what is an egregious situation, pass by, I think it's incumbent on us to look at opportunities to provide the Sports Hall of Fame the chance to continue operating and to show that rich legacy. And so what the motion is requesting is to direct staff to work with the BC Sports Hall of Fame to explore the feasibility of temporarily hosting a rent-free pop-up exhibition at Vancouver City Hall for the duration of the World Cup or such other period as mutually agreed upon. Direct our staff to engage with the BC Sports Hall of Fame and relevant provincial agencies to identify the operational requirements with a temporary relocation, including all various considerations, installation, staffing, security, et cetera. And request that the mayor engage with the Minister of Tourism, Arts, Sports and Culture, that the province provide funding to cover the cost with the temporary relocation. I think what should be noted is that the Sports Hall of Fame folks, as I understand it, are temporarily packing everything up and have to relocate the items because it's going to serve as the media center during FIFA. And so rather than put them in storage, why not bring them up here and give all of the visitors who are coming to our city in unprecedented numbers the opportunity to experience that rich history. And so that is the proposal for council's consideration this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dominato.
Oh, sorry, that's a holdover.
Separate thing?
Yeah.
Okay. Should we move it to an amendment queue, or do we? No, I just, people were queuing up for new business, and so I just. Okay, so I'm going to skip Councillor Dominato and then put her back at the end. Thank you. Councillor Claassen, but you're next in the queue. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Just really briefly, thanks, Councillor Kirby-Young, for bringing this motion, and I know that I certainly hope, but I think the province would be supportive of this. We've seen some of the outcry from community on this one, but obviously this is something where an opportunity when we have so many people coming to visit the city during this major sport event, but also the people of Vancouver itself and people in the region who want to celebrate some of these important figures from our past and sporting legends. And so just being able to do a pop-up like this for that time just sounds like a terrific idea, and I'm very pleased to support it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Meisner.
Thank you. I've been following this, the news coverage of I don't want to call it an eviction, but they were, essentially marched out of BC Place, and it's very unfortunate. And the BC Sports Hall of Fame is a great, not just a destination for visitors, but also for locals to learn more about our sporting history. So I'd be really supportive of bringing this to City Hall and ensuring that the provincial government steps up to fund this temporary pop-up at City Hall. I think it's a great location for it. We have the FIFA dressing on City Hall right now, and we're close to transit, and we have some space. So as long as the provincial government is willing to step up and fund this temporary relocation, I'm in full support of it.
Thank you very much. Seeing no one else in the queue, we'll put it to a vote.
Mayor, if I can get a vote assist in favor, please.
Sure can. Great, and that passes with Councillor Fry abstaining. Okay, so we will go, thank you very much. And I'm going to add Councillor Dominato back to the queue there. Councillor new
I
business.
don't have new business. I have inquiries and other matters.
Oh, okay. Are there any other new business items? No? Okay. We are inquiries and other matters. Councillor Dominato, please go ahead.
Thanks. My question is directed to our city manager and looking for a report back from staff. And I brought this issue up before, but again, it was reported again over the weekend. Is issues around the Grandview Cut, particularly around Commercial and Broadway, and people trespassing and accessing the other side around the rail tracks there. In some cases, they're climbing the fence. In some cases, they're cutting. The fence has been cut through. There's been not only people injured, but also killed. There seems to be multiple jurisdictions involved in terms of the city rail, TransLink. But I would welcome an update and a memo from staff as to, are there some possible remedies through our sort of multiple jurisdictions to prevent people from accessing this space? I know both police and Vancouver Fire Rescue have attended on a number of occasions, so would welcome an update on that.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to the councillor, happy to report back to all of council.
That would be wonderful. Thank you. Secondarily, also would welcome a further update on the Trans-Canada Trail access in East Vancouver at Bridgeway Street. I know that we were in the final leg of getting some agreement settled with the rail company in question, but if we could get a further update as to when that will be reopened to the public, I would welcome that as well. I will note and I did circulate an email to council, but I did want to just acknowledge in public the passing of Charlie Cazzetto. Very grateful for the opportunity to get to know Charlie over the last number of years, but also thank you to all of council who attended and joined us in honoring him with a proclamation recently. But he did pass away with his family on Mother's Day last week, and there'll be a gathering this Friday. But I just wanted to acknowledge his passing and all the contributions he's made to the city of Vancouver and his role not only with soccer and futsal Canada internationally, but also locally as a former Parks and Recreation employee as well. So, but I know he was very honored to be here and to have all of council recognize him. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Charlie was an incredible person. Thank you. Councillor Orr.
Yeah, thank you for that. I just have a question. There's an article, a couple articles that have come over since. There's an article titled "Proposed TransLink Bus Stops Removals Raise Accessibility Concerns in Vancouver's Downtown East Side." And this is a question for the city manager. If council would want to decide to sort of defer that for more consultation with stakeholders in the community, would that need to be a private member's motion to defer those changes, bus stop changes?
Two things. Without having further details, that would appear appropriate to me to have it be a private member's motion, but I will look into it and have report back with more information to all of council. Okay, thanks. And then I do have a second question. Just rezoning, I might be getting ahead of myself, but the 3475 East Hastings, there's a hotel with 85 supportive housing units in it. I just would like a little daylight on this in terms of if the new building will have 85 units of shelter rate in it. You could get back to me at some point. 3475 East Hastings. Thank you. We will.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor Claassen.
Yeah, just a quick shout out to the organizers, presenters, speakers, sponsors, volunteers at Web Summit Vancouver. We saw an incredible conference. I spoke to so many people who found that it was just a tremendous event. It topped what we did last year, and I'm sure it will continue to grow as an important part of our overall landscape. I just saw so much energy and innovation and spoke to companies that were going to be establishing here in Vancouver, bringing hundreds of new jobs. Companies like Nutanix and Infosys, spoke to representatives of those companies, and it's just a validation of why events like Web Summit Vancouver really matter to our city and to our tech community. And so just shout out to everybody who made it such an incredible success. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fry.
Yeah, it's a general inquiry about, it's come to my attention that sign blades, the street signs, have been replaced here in my neighborhood of Strathcona and other neighborhoods with new street signs, and the installer had told residents that it was being paid for by FIFA, which sounded unusual to me. So I'm wondering if we could get an update on the extent of sort of street beautification and specifically street sign replacement and what that's costing and who's paying.
Happy to provide that update.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra, who held their Day of Music, their 7th annual Day of Music this past Saturday, May 16th. The weather cooperated, and it was pretty fantastic to see stages set up across the city from Helmicon to Granville Island, as well as a number of activities at the Orpheum itself, both the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra and the Vancouver School of Music involved in that. All the activities were free. Across the city. I think a number of councillors were involved. I had the opportunity to go down and participate at the Helmicon stage in Yaletown, and it was so well attended. There was such a diverse amount of music that was presented I saw things like flamenco dim sum and a jazz trio, and just seeing people gathering in the city with the chance to enjoy great culture and music for free when families are stretched was really something. I understand that the Orpheum was filled to capacity with lines around the block on Saturday evening when they sort of topped off the full day with a concert. And so I really appreciate it when our arts and culture organizations are finding ways to engage and to provide access to as many people as possible. And it was a really well done one. And that was number 7. And hopefully we'll see number 8 coming up next year as well. Thank you.
Very much. All right, seeing no one else in the queue, can we have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Clausen, seconded by Councillor Dominato. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Like that. Yep. All righty. On to